had no problem raiding Mar-a-Lago. But let's go back even before the Mar-a-Lago raid. Donald Trump's attorneys was in negotiations, in talks with the National Archives. They were well aware of what was happening at Mar-a-Lago. So why the FBI raid? You compare that to what's happened with Joe Biden at his residence, where yes, the FBI was there, but Merrick Garland didn't do his job in making sure that they were running the search and investigation to make sure everything was found and secured. Third question, did Joe Biden's attorneys, do they have security clearance to handle these documents and continue that search? That's a major question as well.
Yeah, well, going back to Mar-a-Lago, those negotiations had gone on for more than a year between the Department of Justice, the Trump organization, or not the Trump organization, but the president's post-presidential organization and the National Archives and Records Administration. But at some point, President Trump's attorneys told those entities that all of the documents had been handed over when that wasn't the case, which is what prompted the raid. So in terms of the differences here, there do seem to be some, but you believe that there is still a double standard here in terms of how those two things were handled.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Because here's the other thing. You get leaks to the press, pictures of documents tossed all over the floor. I mean, come on, this is the kind of double standard that has existed. Unfortunately, it appears at the Department of Justice, one of the reasons why House Republicans have formulated the weaponization of the federal government committee that is going to be looking into this and more, as well as the Oversight Committee. But the one thing that's being lost with the documents that have been found at President Biden's Wilmington home, and to not to step off of that, is what about the documents at the Penn Biden Center? Because those documents are not in his home. They were in another office. How long were those documents there? How did then Vice President Joe Biden get those documents when he left office? And again, vice presidents are very different than presidents of the United States simply because the president of the United States is the head of the executive branch. They have the ability, unlike anybody else, to classify and declassify information. So that's what makes this very different. How long were those documents there? What was the situation around the handling at the Penn Biden Center? That's the stuff that I know media is focused on, the residents and the Corvette, but my focus is still on the Penn Biden Center because those are the documents that Joe Biden had in his possession apparently before he became president of the United States.
When your lies are so egregious that even Fox News anchors have to start fact-checking you on air, you might have lost the plot. This is Byron Donalds, who gained momentary fame in the Republican Party when he became the speaker choice for a small handful of Republicans who were delaying McCarthy's speaker election while they were busy exacting concessions. And so now he's being trotted out to spew talking points that are so tenuous, even John Roberts can't let them go. Now, first off, Donalds claims that the raid was improper because Trump's attorneys were in negotiations with the National Archives, which is one way to describe the fact that the National Archives sought those documents and Donald Trump refused to return them over and over again for over a year, to the point where the FBI had to present evidence to a federal magistrate to execute a search warrant, and even that judge agreed. Here's a hint. It doesn't get to that point if you simply return the documents that were taken. This isn't a negotiation here. It's these are classified documents that don't belong to you, so return them immediately or we send the FBI in to get them. And the fact that the FBI had to go in and get them well over a year after he was out of office tells you exactly where Trump stood in all of this. Consider, too, Trump had his lawyer sign a document attesting, falsely, that all documents had been returned, meaning that he was claiming that there were no other documents, only to then be proven wrong once the FBI found several hundred. So how does Byron Donalds square the fact that Trump was in, quote, negotiations with the National Archives if, in reality, he was actually just telling the National Archives that the documents that were sitting in his beach resort weren't actually there? Doesn't exactly sound like a very fruitful negotiation, if you ask me. In fact, it just sounds like Trump was lying and then got caught. Donalds then pivots to Joe Biden and attacks Merrick Garland for not conducting the search like the FBI did at Mar-a-Lago. And to that, I'd say the reason is probably that the first thing Biden's team did was call the National Archives and return them. In fact, I can't say for sure, but I doubt the National Archives even knew these documents were missing from Biden's office. But Biden's team found them and did exactly what they were supposed to do, which was to return them immediately. There was no protracted legal battle, no lawyers signing fake attestations, no whining about documents being planted, no claims of declassification via mind control. They just found the documents and returned them. So in terms of why the FBI wasn't needed, I think that answer is pretty clear. And Byron Donalds pointing to Joe Biden doesn't create some equivalence between Biden and Trump. It does the exact opposite. It just highlights exactly what Trump did wrong. Donalds then debuts some faux outrage that Biden's attorneys might not have proper security clearance to handle those documents. But if he's so worried about Biden's attorneys having the proper clearance, then I'll bet he's super concerned about 300 classified documents being found mixed in with Trump's personal affairs at a beach resort that has already been infiltrated by foreign actors. I'm sure Byron Donalds was all over the airwaves voicing his concern about those things, because if he wasn't, then it sure would start to seem like he's not actually interested in national security, but instead mostly just interested in being a partisan hack on behalf of the GOP's Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. And finally, Donalds parrots the tired talking point that actually Trump was in the clear because he had the power to declassify documents as president, but the documents that were found in Biden's office were from his time as vice president, and VPs don't have the power to declassify. And here's the thing to remember. Presidents have the power to go through a process to declassify documents, but just willing it into existence via mind control doesn't do the trick. And Donald Trump did not go through that process. In fact, we know he didn't go through the process for two reasons. First, he claimed that the documents were planted by the FBI. If he had actually declassified them, why would he have to claim that the FBI planted them? And second, if he had declassified them, his lawyers would have brought up that point when they went to court to litigate this exact issue. But his lawyers didn't say a word about declassification because it wasn't true. And they knew that if they knowingly lied to a judge in a courtroom, they'd open themselves up to sanctions or even disbarment. So Trump can lie in the court of public opinion, but his lawyers can't lie in a courtroom. And the fact that they refused to surface this claim to a judge tells you everything you need to know about its validity. So again, if the argument here is that a president can declassify but a vice president can't, just remember the fact that while Trump can declassify, he didn't. Meaning both of them mishandled classified documents, but only one immediately returned them to the National Archives, while the other dragged out the process for over a year, lied about it, had his lawyers lie about it, and ultimately forced law enforcement to execute a search warrant in his home. If you think these two scenarios are the same, then I'm sorry, but you are living on a different planet. So let's be clear, if Trump had just taken the documents and returned them, this wouldn't have even been a blip on the radar. Sure, we would have complained that he was careless, but the fact is that just about all presidents have taken declassified documents. Here's Republican James Comer admitting as much on Fox News.
Bill Clinton, Obama, Bush, every president had accidentally taken documents that were deemed classified, yet they were never raided. Yet they never were treated with a special counsel like Donald Trump was. Now we find out Joe Biden did the exact same thing that every president has done. So there's a problem here with the National Archives and how documents leave the presidency and follow the ex-president. So,
I think there was
this is the concern.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true with regard to President Obama and President Bush, but clearly we have evidence that it's true with President Trump and Vice President Biden.
Our research shows that every president has accidentally taken documents.
In other words, it happens a lot. What doesn't happen is that presidents refuse to return them, which, by the way, is why Trump is looking at charges of unlawful retention and obstruction of justice. Again, the issue at the heart of this isn't the fact that he had the documents, because this is otherwise a pretty common occurrence. What's not common is obstructing efforts to get them back. James Comer knows this, Byron Donalds knows this, and Donald Trump knows this, but that isn't going to prevent them from pretending otherwise. At the end of the day, this faux outrage is nothing but political theater for a party that knows it can't rely on the truth, so it has no choice but to double down on the lies. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.